The unexpected encounter. The soft hum of machinery filled the corridors of Space Station Orion 7, a bustling hub that connected countless alien species across the galaxy. Traders, diplomats, and explorers walked side by side, each with their own purpose. Amidst this chaos was John Carter, a human mechanic with grease-streaked hands and a knack for fixing just about anything. John loved his quiet life. He didn't care for politics, alien cultures, or the endless talk of interstellar conflicts. His world revolved around wrenches, gears, and the occasional cup of strong black coffee. Little did he know, his peaceful routine was about to collide with a secret that would shake the foundations of an alien empire. That morning, John was hunched over a stubborn generator in Docking Bay C. The lights above flickered, and sparks flew as he muttered, "Come on, you piece of junk. Work with me here." He didn't notice the growing commotion behind him until a shadow fell across his workbench. "Excuse me, human," a soft but commanding voice said. John turned, wiping his hands on his jumpsuit, to see a group of tall, regal-looking aliens standing in perfect formation. They were Exerionians, known for their towering frames, shimmering silver skin, and glowing golden eyes. The leader of the group stepped forward, his long, flowing robe brushing the polished floor. He carried an air of authority, but his expression was calm, almost curious. "You are the one known as John Carter." John blinked, surprised. Yeah, that's me. Can I help you?" The alien tilted his head slightly, as if considering John's words carefully. Then, to John's utter bewilderment, the Exerionian bent down, lowering himself into a deep, formal bow. The other aliens immediately followed, their elegant forms folding in unison. "What the—" John stepped back, his eyes wide. Hey, there's no need to bow. I'm just a mechanic." The leader slowly straightened, his glowing eyes locking onto John's. "No need to bow," he repeated, his voice heavy with meaning. The words seemed to ripple through the group, causing a murmur among the Exerionians. They exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of surprise and something else. Was it awe? John scratched his head, feeling increasingly uncomfortable. "Look, I don't know what's going on, but I think you've got the wrong guy. I'm just here to fix things, not whatever this is." The leader turned to his companions and spoke in their language, a melodic series of hums and clicks. John couldn't understand a word, but he caught one phrase that sent a shiver down his spine. "The chosen one." "Chosen one," John repeated out loud, his tone half laughing, half nervous. "Yeah, no, definitely not me." The leader turned back to John, his expression unreadable. "Forgive us, human. We meant no offense. However, your words and actions carry great significance in our culture. To dismiss our bow is unprecedented. What?" John frowned. "Look, I'm just being polite. Where I come from, bowing's not really a thing. It doesn't mean anything." The alien's eyes seemed to glow brighter for a moment. "Ah, but that is where you are mistaken. In our culture, only one who embodies the spirit of divinity would dare to reject such a gesture. It is a sign of true humility, one prophesied in our ancient texts." John stared at him, the words washing over him like cold water. "Okay, now I know you've got the wrong guy. I'm just a mechanic, not some divine hero." But the Exerionians didn't look convinced. If anything, their reverence seemed to deepen. The leader gave a small, almost imperceptible smile. "Perhaps it is you who does not yet know your true self." John let out a nervous laugh. "Right. Sure. Well, if that's all, I really need to get back to fixing this generator." Before the alien could respond, a loud commotion erupted at the entrance of the docking bay. John turned to see a crowd of onlookers gathering, their eyes fixed on the Exerionians. Whispers spread like wildfire. "Did you see them bowing to the human? What does it mean? Could he be?" John groaned. "Great, just what I needed, attention." The leader stepped closer, lowering his voice. "We apologize for causing a scene, but we cannot ignore the signs. Your words may seem insignificant to you, but they have set events in motion that cannot be undone." "Events?" John asked, feeling a knot of unease forming in his stomach. "What kind of events?" The alien hesitated, as if weighing how much to reveal. "It is not my place to explain. But know this, your life as you knew it is over. The Empire of Syrian will soon call upon you, whether you are ready or not." "Over?" John repeated, his voice rising. No. My life is just fine the way it is. I don't want anything to do with your empire or your prophecies." The alien leader gave a slight bow, his expression solemn. "You may not have a choice, John Carter." As the Exarionians turned and walked away, their robes flowing behind them, John stood frozen in place. His mind raced with questions. What just happened? Why were they bowing to him? And most importantly, what had he gotten himself into? In the shadows of the docking bay, a figure watched the exchange with keen interest. A small device glowed in their hand as they sent a transmission. "The prophecy has begun. The human is unaware. Proceed with caution." Unaware of the unseen observer, John shook his head and turned back to his work. But deep down, he couldn't shake the feeling that his quiet life was slipping through his fingers, and that something far bigger than himself was about to begin. Whispers in the shadows. John Carter couldn't stop thinking about the strange encounter with the Exarionians. The rest of his day passed in a blur, though his hands worked on autopilot, fixing broken equipment and addressing routine maintenance requests. But his mind, that was a battlefield of confusion. Who bows to a mechanic? And what was this nonsense about a prophecy? As the artificial night settled over Space Station Orion 7, John retreated to his modest quarters. The room was as unremarkable as he was. A small cot, a worn-out chair, and a few tools scattered across the desk. He sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the ceiling. "The chosen one," he muttered, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Yeah, right." Unbeknownst to John, the wheels of destiny had already begun to turn. Across the station, whispers about the bowing Exarionians had spread like wildfire. Traders and travelers swapped exaggerated versions of the story over drinks. Some dismissed it as a misunderstanding, while others spoke in hushed tones about ancient legends and human involvement in galactic affairs. One of those whisperers, however, was far from an idle gossip. In the shadows, a sleek figure moved silently through the dim corridors of Orion 7. Clad in a hooded cloak that concealed their identity, the figure carried a compact device glowing faintly with encrypted transmissions. They stopped at an unmarked door, glancing both ways before entering. Inside, the room was dark except for the eerie glow of holographic displays. Maps, charts, and alien symbols floated midair, all focused on one thing: Xarionian culture and their infamous prophecy. The hooded figure raised their device, speaking into it in a low, raspy tone. "The human has no idea," they reported. He dismissed their bowing as a cultural misunderstanding, but the Exarionians are convinced. They're calling him the Divine One. A voice crackled back through the device, metallic and cold. "Has he exhibited any signs, unusual abilities, connections to their prophecy?" "None," the figure replied. "He's just a mechanic, a nobody. But the Exarionians believe he's critical to their future. The Emperor will want him brought to Xarion immediately." There was a pause, then a sinister command. "Ensure he does not reach the Emperor. If the prophecy comes true, it will undo everything we've built." The figure nodded. "Understood. I'll take care of it." They cut the transmission and melted back into the shadows, leaving no trace of their presence. The target was clear: John Carter. And whether he liked it or not, his life was now in danger. The alien request. The next morning, John was back at work, trying to bury the strange encounter in the routine of his day. He was halfway through replacing a faulty power coupling when a voice startled him. "John Carter." He turned to find Varric. the leader of the Exerionian delegation, standing a few feet away. Unlike the day before, Varric seemed less formal, though his golden eyes still carried an unnerving intensity. "Oh, it's you," John said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Look, I'm really sorry if I offended you yesterday, but I promise I'm not some chosen savior or whatever you think I am." Varric tilted his head. "You misunderstand. You did not offend us. Quite the opposite. Your words were enlightening." John sighed. "Great. Enlightening. Look, I don't mean to be rude, but I've got work to do. So unless this is about a broken engine, it is about you." Varric interrupted. "The Emperor has summoned you." John froze. "The Emperor of Exerion summoned me? Are you kidding?" Varric's expression remained calm, but there was a flicker of urgency in his tone. "I am not joking. The events of yesterday have set in motion a chain of events we cannot ignore. You must come with us." "Come with you? To your planet?" John shook his head. "No way. I've got a job here, and I'm not about to drop everything because of some misunderstanding." Varric stepped closer, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "This is bigger than you realize. If the Emperor believes you are the one foretold in our prophecies, your refusal could be seen as a declaration of war." John blinked. "War? Over me? You've got to be joking." "I wish I were," Varric said, his golden eyes meeting John's. "But this is the reality we face. The fate of my people, and possibly yours, depends on your willingness to cooperate. The unseen threat." As John tried to wrap his head around Varric's words, the hooded figure watched from the shadows, listening to every word. Their device recorded the conversation, transmitting it to an unknown location. In their earpiece, the metallic voice returned. "Do not let him leave the station alive." The figure nodded, their eyes narrowing. "Understood." The decision. Back in the docking bay, John paced nervously as Varric and the other Exerionians prepared their ship. Every fiber of his being screamed to stay on the station, to cling to the safety of his ordinary life. But deep down, he knew that wasn't an option anymore. "What happens if I don't go?" John finally asked. Varric's expression darkened. "Chaos. Division. War." John sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Fine. I'll go. But don't expect me to believe any of this prophecy nonsense." Varric inclined his head. "That is all we ask." As John boarded the alien ship, the hooded figure slipped away, ready to execute their orders. The game had begun, and John Carter was at the center of it. Little did he know, the shadows were closing in, and his life was about to change forever. The alien court summons. The Exerionian ship was unlike anything John Carter had ever seen. Its interior gleamed with a metallic sheen, its walls pulsating faintly as though alive. Every surface emitted a soft golden glow, and the air carried a strange, calming fragrance that John couldn't place. Despite its beauty, he felt like a prisoner. The Exerionians treated him with reverence, but their unwavering gazes made his skin crawl. The leader, Varric, stood at the center of the room, watching John carefully. "We will reach Exerion in 3 standard rotations," he said, his tone calm but firm. "During this time, we will prepare you for what lies ahead." John folded his arms, leaning back against the curved wall. "Prepare me for what? I already told you. I'm not this chosen one or divine savior, or whatever you think I am." Varric didn't flinch. "You underestimate your importance, human. The Emperor will want to see you personally. You will be presented before the royal court." "Presented?" John repeated, his voice rising. "Like a trophy? Look, I didn't ask for any of this. I just want to go back to my station, fix a few engines, and live a normal life." Varric's golden eyes softened, but his resolve remained unshaken. "I understand your frustration, John Carter, but fate does not ask for consent. It simply unfolds." John rolled his eyes. "Yeah, well, tell fate to find someone else." Whispers of the prophecy. As the ship sped through hyperspace, John found himself restless, pacing the smooth floors of his quarters. He didn't trust the Exerionians, no matter how polite they were, and their insistence on treating him like some cosmic messiah was unsettling. Every time he tried to think of a way to get out of this mess, he hit a mental wall. During one of his pacing sessions, the door to his quarters slid open with a soft hiss. A young Exerionian stepped inside, her silver skin glinting in the ambient light. She was smaller than the others, with a nervous energy that made her appear almost human. "I am Lyra," she said softly, bowing slightly. "I was sent to ensure you are comfortable." "Comfortable?" John scoffed, gesturing to the luxurious room. "Yeah, I'm living the dream. Except for the part where I'm being dragged across the galaxy against my will." Lyra hesitated, then stepped closer. "I know this must be overwhelming, but you should know, there are those who believe in you, even beyond our empire." John frowned. "Believe in me? For what? I don't even know what this prophecy says." Lyra glanced at the door as if checking to make sure no one was listening. Then, lowering her voice, she said, "The prophecy speaks of a human who will bring balance to the empire of Styrian. It was written centuries ago, long before humans were even known to us. It says the chosen one will rise from a humble life, uniting the galaxy, or tearing it apart." John let out a bitter laugh. "And you think that's me? I'm a mechanic, Lyra, not some galactic savior." She looked at him earnestly. "Perhaps it is not what you do, but who you are. The fact that you dismissed Varric's bow without hesitation, it means something to our people. It symbolizes humility and strength, qualities we have long revered." John rubbed his temples. "This is insane. You realize that, right?" Before Lyra could respond, an alarm blared through the ship, its sharp tones cutting through the air. The room's golden lights dimmed, replaced by a pulsing red glow. "The ambush." Varric's voice crackled through the intercom. "John Carter, remain in your quarters. We are under attack." "Under attack," John muttered. "Perfect. Just perfect." Ignoring the order, he rushed to the nearest viewport. Outside, the black expanse of space was alive with chaos. Small, dart-like ships swarmed around the Exerionian vessel, firing bursts of energy that crackled against its shimmering shields. The Exerionian's ship returned fire, its weapons precise but clearly outnumbered. The door to his quarters hissed open again, and Varric strode in, his calm demeanor replaced by urgency. "We must move you to the inner chambers. It is not safe here." John followed reluctantly, Lyra close behind. As they navigated the ship's twisting corridors, explosions rocked the vessel, throwing them off balance. "Who's attacking us?" John asked, his voice tense. Varric's jaw tightened. "Rogue elements within the Empire. They oppose the prophecy and seek to ensure it is never fulfilled." "Great," John said sarcastically. "So I'm not just a fake savior, I'm also a target." As they reached the inner chambers, another explosion shook the ship. This time, the lights flickered and dimmed. Varric swore under his breath, something John didn't think Exerionians were capable of. "They've breached the outer defenses," Varric said. "We don't have much time." The hidden ally. Inside the chamber, a small team of Exerionians worked furiously at a glowing console. One of them turned to Varric, their voice urgent. "We've detected an unauthorized transmission from within the ship. Someone is feeding our attackers information." "A traitor." Varric's expression darkened. John's stomach sank. "Let me guess. This has something to do with me." "It has everything to do with you," Varric replied. He turned to the team. "Seal the ship's core and initiate defensive protocols. No one leaves without my command." As the team scrambled to follow orders, Lyra leaned toward John. "There is more to this than they are telling you. The traitor may not be working alone." "What's that supposed to mean?" John asked. Before she could answer, the chamber door burst open, and a group of armed Exerionians stormed in. But something was off. Their uniforms bore no insignias, and their leader carried a weapon unlike anything John had seen. "You will come with us, human," the leader said, his voice cold and mechanical. John raised his hands in mock surrender. "Yeah, that's not happening." Varric stepped in front of him, drawing his own weapon. "If you want him, you'll have to go through me." The intruders didn't hesitate. Blasts of energy filled the air as chaos erupted in the chamber. John dove for cover, his heart pounding. For a mechanic who wanted nothing to do with galactic politics, he was now right in the middle of a battle for the fate of the galaxy. And there was no turning back. The hidden enemy. The Exerionian royal ship limped into the orbit of its homeworld, Sirion Prime, its elegant hull marred by scorch marks and jagged scars from the recent ambush. Inside, the atmosphere was tense. The crew worked tirelessly to repair the damage, while John Carter sat in a heavily secured room, his mind spinning with the events that had just unfolded. The memory of the attack played on a loop in his head. Rogue Sirionians, their cold voices demanding his surrender, the explosive firefight that followed. Varric and his crew had barely managed to repel the assault, but not without casualties. John had even been forced to fire a weapon for the first time in his life. The weight of it still felt heavy in his hands, even though he had dropped it hours ago. The arrival on Xerion. John Carter. Varric's voice broke through the ship's comm system. "Prepare yourself. We are about to land on Xerion Prime." John rose from his seat, staring out the small viewport. The planet below was breathtaking, a mosaic of shimmering silver oceans and glowing green forests. Towering spires of alien architecture pierced the sky, their surfaces reflecting the light of 3 suns. "Looks like something out of a dream," John muttered, though his awe was tinged with unease. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was stepping into something far bigger than himself. The ship descended smoothly onto a platform surrounded by Exerionian guards in ornate armor. As the ramp lowered, Varric and his team formed a protective circle around John. The crowd of onlookers murmured as he stepped out, their golden eyes fixed on him with a mix of curiosity and reverence. "Do they all know about this prophecy thing?" John whispered to Varric. "Yes," Varric replied without looking at him. "And many of them will expect you to fulfill it." "No pressure," John muttered sarcastically. The Emperor's Court. The group was escorted into the heart of the Exerionian capital, a vast palace carved from a single shimmering crystal. Inside, the air was cool and heavy with incense. The throne room was unlike anything John had ever seen, its high ceilings adorned with floating, glowing symbols that shifted and danced like living beings. At the center of the room sat the Emperor of Sirion, his presence both commanding and serene. He was taller than the others, his silver skin almost radiant, and his eyes, deeper gold than any John had seen, seemed to pierce through him. "John Carter," the Emperor said, his voice echoing in the vast chamber. "You stand before the heart of Sirion, as the one foretold in our most sacred texts. Do you understand the gravity of this moment?" John hesitated, glancing at Varric before answering. "Honestly, no. I'm just a mechanic. I don't know why I'm here, and I definitely don't know what you expect from me." The Emperor's lips curved into a faint smile. "Humility. A rare trait in the galaxy. Perhaps that is why fate has chosen you." Before John could respond, a commotion broke out near the entrance of the throne room. A group of Exerionians entered, their expressions grim. They were high-ranking officials, judging by their elaborate robes, but their presence carried a dark tension. One of them, a stern-faced woman, stepped forward. "Your Majesty, we must address the matter of the human's arrival. Not all of us agree that he is the one spoken of in the prophecy." The Emperor's gaze didn't waver. "And yet he stands here, alive, after an attack meant to ensure he would not reach us. Does that not speak to his significance?" The woman's eyes flicked to John, sharp and untrusting. "Or it speaks to the growing threat of the rogue faction. His presence here may divide us further." Unmasking the traitor. As the debate raged on, John felt a sinking sensation in his gut. These people were fighting over him, and he didn't even want to be here. But his discomfort turned to suspicion as he noticed something strange. Among the officials, one man seemed out of place. His movements were too calculated, his eyes darting nervously between the Emperor and the exits. John leaned toward Varric and whispered, "Who's that guy?" "The one who looks like he's trying not to be noticed." Varric followed John's gaze and frowned. "That's Counselor Drex. He oversees our intelligence networks." "Well, Drex looks like he's got something to hide," John said. Before Varric could respond, Drex made his move. In one fluid motion, he raised a small device and activated it. The throne room filled with a high-pitched hum as the lights flickered and chaos erupted. Guards rushed forward, but it was too late. The room's security systems were disabled, leaving the Emperor vulnerable. Drex turned to John, his face twisted with fury. "You are the reason for this chaos, human. Your existence threatens everything we have built." John barely had time to react as Drex lunged toward him, a blade of shimmering energy in his hand. But before the weapon could strike, Varric intercepted him, their weapons clashing in a burst of light. The hidden enemy revealed. As Varric and Drex fought, the Emperor rose from his throne, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Drex, you betray your people and your Emperor. For what cause?" Drex sneered, his composure cracking. "For the preservation of Xurion. This prophecy will tear us apart. If the human lives, he will bring ruin, not unity." The room fell silent as the weight of Drex's words settled over them. John felt every eye on him, but he didn't know what to say. He didn't even believe in this prophecy, let alone want to be part of it. Varric disarmed Drex with a swift move, pinning him to the ground. "You will answer for your treachery," he growled. As guards dragged Drex away, John turned to the Emperor. "So, this prophecy of yours, is it worth all this? Because I'm starting to think I'm more trouble than I'm worth." The Emperor studied John for a long moment before answering. "The prophecy is not about what you are, John Carter. It is about what you will choose to become." John didn't have a response. For the first time, he realized this wasn't just about surviving anymore. This was about deciding what kind of person he wanted to be, and whether he could live up to the expectations placed on his shoulders. And in the shadows of Xurion, unseen eyes continued to watch, their plans shifting with every move John made. The game was far from over. The trial of truth. The air inside the Emperor's chamber was heavy with tension. John Carter stood at the center of the grand hall, his reflection shimmering in the polished crystal floor beneath him. Around him, members of the Xurionian High Council watched silently, their expressions a mix of curiosity and skepticism. Varric stood at his side, his posture protective, while the Emperor sat on his throne, his golden eyes fixed on John. The trial of truth is not simply a test of strength or skill, the Emperor began, his voice echoing through the chamber. It is a test of the soul, of character, and of intent. If you are truly the one foretold, you will endure. If not, the trial will reveal the truth. John shifted uncomfortably. "Right. And what happens if I fail?" The Emperor's gaze was steady. "If you fail, the prophecy will be declared false, and you will be free to return to your life. But failure would also confirm to our enemies that unity is impossible." John sighed, running a hand through his hair. "No pressure then." The first trial. Memories, shadows. The chamber dimmed, the light shifting into a strange, ethereal glow. The floor beneath John rippled like water, and he found himself transported to a new space. A dark, mist-filled arena where shadows danced around him. A voice echoed through the mist, deep and commanding. "The first trial is one of reflection. Face your past, human, and confront the truths you hide even from yourself." The mist parted, revealing a scene from John's childhood. He recognized it instantly. The small, run-down workshop where his father used to work. His father stood hunched over a workbench, tools scattered around him, his face lined with frustration and exhaustion. John froze. This memory was one he had buried deep, a moment he had tried to forget. His younger self appeared, standing in the doorway, hesitant and scared. "Dad?" the younger John asked, his voice trembling. "What do you want?" His father snapped without turning around. "Can't you see I'm busy?" The memory played out as it always had. His father's words were sharp, cutting into the boy's confidence. John had wanted to show his father a drawing he'd made, something he was proud of. Instead, he had retreated, hurt and silent. But this time, something was different. The shadowy figure of his father turned toward him, toward the present-day John. "You carried this moment with you, didn't you?" the figure said, its voice a mix of his father's and something alien. "It shaped you, made you doubt your worth." John's fists clenched. "Yeah, maybe it did, but I moved on." "Did you?" the figure challenged. "Or do you still let it define you?" The mist thickened, swirling around John as the scene faded. He felt the weight of the question pressing on him, forcing him to confront the truth. Finally, he spoke, his voice steady. "It doesn't define me anymore. I'm more than my past." The mist dissipated, revealing the arena once more. A faint light glowed in the distance, a sign that he had passed the first trial. The second trial, the test of sacrifice. The light grew brighter, and the arena shifted again. This time, John found himself standing in the middle of a chaotic battlefield. Explosions rocked the ground, and screams filled the air. He recognized the scene instantly. Earth, under attack by an alien force. Around him, humans fought desperately against towering machines, their weapons barely making a dent. In the distance, he saw a young girl trapped beneath rubble, crying out for help. Instinctively, John moved toward her, but a voice stopped him. "You cannot save them all, human." He turned to see another figure, this one cloaked in silver, its face obscured. "You must choose, the girl or the defense systems. One will save lives today, the other will save the planet tomorrow." John's heart pounded as he looked between the girl and the console controlling the defense systems. The girl's cries grew louder, pulling at his humanity. But the thought of leaving Earth vulnerable to further attacks chilled him. "I can't just abandon her," he shouted. The figure remained silent, its presence heavy and unyielding. John clenched his jaw, forcing himself to focus. He sprinted toward the console, his hands shaking as he activated the system. A barrage of missiles launched into the sky, intercepting the enemy forces. The battlefield quieted, but when John turned back to the girl, the rubble was silent. The arena faded once more, leaving him alone with his guilt. But a new voice echoed around him, soft and understanding. "Sacrifice is never easy, John Carter, but it is necessary. You have passed the final trial." Truth of the heart. The arena shifted one last time, transforming into a vast, star-filled void. John floated weightlessly, surrounded by infinite darkness and light. A single figure appeared before him, himself. This doppelganger stared at John with piercing eyes, speaking in his own voice. "Who are you, John Carter?" A mechanic, a savior, a man running from his own potential. John glared back. "I'm just me. I didn't ask for any of this." The figure stepped closer. "But it's yours now. The question is, what will you do with it?" John hesitated, the weight of everything pressing on him. He thought of Earth, the Exarionians, the people who had fought and died because of this prophecy. He didn't feel worthy of their faith, but maybe, just maybe, he didn't have to be perfect to try. "I'll do what I can," he said finally. "That's all anyone can do." The figure smiled faintly, then dissolved into light. The void around him shimmered, and he felt himself being pulled back to the Emperor's chamber. The verdict. When John opened his eyes, he was back in the throne room. The Exarionians watched him silently, their expressions unreadable. The Emperor rose from his throne, his golden eyes shining. "You have faced the trials of truth and emerged whole," the emperor declared. "The prophecy may guide us, but your actions will determine the future." John let out a shaky breath, his mind still reeling. He wasn't sure what he had proven, or to whom, but one thing was clear: he couldn't turn back now. In the shadows of the room, hidden among the crowd, the unseen enemy watched. The trials might be over, but the true battle was just beginning. The Emperor's secret. The chamber of that Xerionian emperor gleamed with an ethereal light, its walls pulsating gently as though alive. But for John Carter, everything seemed to have shifted. He had faced the trials of truth and survived, but now something heavier lingered in the air. The Emperor had summoned him for a private meeting, and John knew this would be the moment where everything changed. As he stepped into the private audience hall, the doors closed behind him with a soft hiss. The Emperor sat at the far end of the room, his posture regal and calm, his golden eyes watching John with an unreadable expression. For a moment, they both stood in silence, the weight of unspoken truths hanging between them. "John Carter," the Emperor's voice broke the stillness, resonating with an ancient power that seemed to echo in John's bones. "You have passed the trials, but there is something you must understand, something you must know about your past, about your lineage." John raised an eyebrow, confusion clouding his thoughts. "My lineage? I don't even know what you're talking about. I'm just a guy from Earth, that's all." The Emperor's gaze softened, though his voice remained steady. "You are far more than just a man from Earth, John. You are the key to something far greater than you can yet comprehend." John stepped forward, his heart pounding. "What are you saying?" The Emperor stood, walking slowly toward him. "There are truths hidden in the fabric of history, John, secrets buried beneath the surface of the galaxy itself. Your bloodline carries a significance that was once lost, a connection that even the most ancient of our records could not fully explain." John's mind raced. "Are you saying I'm some kind of alien?" The Emperor's lips parted slightly, but he did not smile. "Not alien, but not purely human either. The truth is much more complex. You carry within you the essence of two worlds, two peoples. The blood of Xerion runs through your veins." John's stomach dropped. "What? That's impossible. How can I be connected to you? My parents are from Earth. I've never even left the planet until a few days ago." The Emperor's eyes darkened, a shadow passing over his face. "The answer lies in the ancient histories of both your people and ours. Long before your time, before even the founding of Earth, there was an alliance between our two species. It was a time of peace, of mutual respect. But a great betrayal shattered that peace, and with it, the knowledge of your existence was erased." John's head spun, his mind trying to make sense of what the Emperor was saying. "So, what? I'm some kind of descendant from this ancient alliance?" The Emperor nodded, his face solemn. "Yes, and it is this hidden heritage that has led you here, to this moment. The prophecy does not simply speak of a human rising to change the fate of the Xerionian Empire. It speaks of the union of two races, a union that was broken long ago. You are the link between us, John." John clenched his fists, his thoughts a storm of confusion and disbelief. "This is insane. How could I be the link? I didn't ask for any of this. I don't even know anything about your history, your people." The Emperor's eyes softened, but his words were firm. "You will learn, John. You must, because the future of both Earth and Xerion depends on it." The forbidden history. The Emperor gestured toward a grand crystalline pedestal in the center of the room. Embedded within it was a glowing orb, its light pulsing rhythmically. With a slow, deliberate motion, the Emperor activated the orb, and the room was instantly filled with holographic projections, images of ancient times, of towering cities and peaceful gatherings, of two peoples united in purpose. John watched in stunned silence as the history of the Xerionian people unfolded before him. But it wasn't just their story. There were glimpses of Earth, long before humanity even realized it had a place in the stars. Ships of both species had traveled together, built together, and shared knowledge. This was the time of the Great Alliance, the Emperor explained, his voice echoing through the images. For centuries, Exerion and Earth stood together, united against common enemies, building a future of peace. But it all came crashing down. A faction within our people betrayed the alliance, sowing distrust and hatred. The knowledge of our bond was hidden, erased from history. We could not risk future generations discovering the truth. The images shifted, and John saw a familiar face, one that looked eerily like his own. It was a human, a male warrior, standing beside a Xerionian woman, their hands clasped together. The Emperor's voice softened. "Your ancestor, John. He was the last of the Earth-Xerion Union. He was a key figure in our shared history, and his bloodline carried the promise of unity." John's breath caught in his throat. That's me. I mean, how could I be him? The Emperor turned toward John, his gaze unwavering. "You are the living continuation of a bloodline that both our people believe to be lost. You carry the potential to reunite us, to heal the wounds of the past, and lead us into a new era." John took a step back, his mind struggling to keep up with the enormity of what the Emperor was revealing. "I'm just a guy from Earth. I don't know anything about this history. I don't even know what you want me to do." The Emperor's expression remained steady. "The choice is yours, John Carter. The fate of both Earth and Xerion rests in your hands. The prophecy is not just a statement of what will be, but a challenge, one that you must face. If you choose to embrace your heritage, you will become the bridge between our peoples. But know this, not all will accept the union. There are those who still see it as a betrayal, who would rather see the alliance destroyed once and for all." The unseen threat. As the room seemed to grow heavier with the weight of the Emperor's words, a low rumble echoed through the palace. The soft glow of the orb flickered, and the atmosphere shifted. The Emperor's face tightened, his golden eyes scanning the room. "The traitors," the Emperor muttered under his breath. "They've made their move." John felt a chill crawl up his spine. "What do you mean, made their move? What's happening?" Before the Emperor could respond, the entire palace shook violently, and the lights flickered as alarms blared. The ground trembled beneath their feet as a series of explosions rocked the structure. John could hear the distant sounds of shouts and the pounding of heavy footsteps. "Come with me," the Emperor said urgently, his voice now filled with commanding authority. He turned and led John through the corridors, their footsteps echoing in the vast hallways. As they moved quickly through the palace, Varric appeared, his face grim. "Your Majesty, they've infiltrated the lower levels. The rogue faction has launched an assault. They're targeting the ancient archives." John's heart raced. The archives. What's in the archives? Varric turned toward him, his face taut with concern. "Everything, John. The truth. The history of our people. They cannot allow it to be known. If the traitors destroy the archives, your connection to Xerion, your very existence, will be erased once again." John's mind spun as the reality of the situation set in. Not only was he caught in the middle of a galactic power struggle, but now he was the target of a ruthless faction determined to erase his very existence. The hidden enemy, the ones who sought to destroy the alliance, were closing in. And for the first time since his arrival, John realized just how dangerous his role had become. The battle for the future had begun, and John Carter, reluctant hero or not, was about to play a pivotal part in it. The choice that defines fate. The corridors of that Xerionian palace were bathed in the glow of emergency lights, their red beams flickering as chaos erupted outside. The roar of distant explosions echoed through the stone walls, shaking the very foundation of the palace. John Carter moved quickly, his heart pounding in his chest as Varric and the Emperor led him deeper into the palace, away from the growing conflict. "The archives are just ahead," Varric said, his voice tight with urgency. If we do not reach them in time, everything will be lost. John barely heard him. His mind was racing, still reeling from the revelations about his bloodline and the weight of the prophecy. His life had been turned upside down in a matter of days, and now he was caught in the middle of a galactic war, a war that seemed to hinge on him. But what did it all mean? What did the Emperor expect of him? What was he supposed to do with this newfound power and responsibility? "John," the Emperor said, his voice commanding, "you must understand. The choice before you is not simple. It is not about what is easy or what you want. It is about what you are willing to sacrifice." They reached the entrance to the ancient archives, massive doors adorned with symbols John didn't recognize. The doors groaned open, revealing a vast chamber filled with towering shelves, each one holding ancient scrolls, holographic records, and relics from Xyrion's storied past. The archives were the heart of the Xyrionian Empire's knowledge, a place that contained everything from their earliest history to the most sacred prophecies. Varric stepped forward, his hand resting on a panel by the door. "The archives are shielded. We must protect them at all costs. If the traitors gain access, they will destroy everything you've learned about your heritage, John." John swallowed hard, the weight of the situation bearing down on him. "But what if I don't want any of this? What if I'm not the hero you think I am?" The Emperor's golden eyes met his, unwavering and full of purpose. "You are more than you know, John. You are not just a mechanic or an unwilling player in this galaxy's game. You are the descendant of both worlds, the key to a future neither Earth nor Xyrion can afford to ignore. The choice is yours to make, but you must choose wisely." The two paths. As they stepped into the heart of the archives, John felt a strange weight in the air. The room pulsed with energy, ancient knowledge flowing through the very walls. Yet, amid the reverence of the space, John couldn't shake the tension in his chest. The flickering lights outside the chamber grew more erratic, and the sounds of battle seemed to draw nearer. Varric turned to John, his face grim. "There are two choices before you, John. One will save this empire, and one will save Earth. The first is to join the Xyrionian people fully. Embrace your heritage, unite the two worlds, and forge a path to peace and prosperity. One that will require sacrifice, not just from you, but from both peoples." John's breath caught in his throat. What kind of sacrifice? "Many would see the union between Xyrion and Earth as a betrayal," Varric said, his voice heavy with the weight of truth. "To embrace it would mean alienating the Xyrionian factions that still believe in the old ways. Some of your allies will become your enemies, and you will face opposition on Earth, where the truth of your heritage will be rejected by those who fear what it means." John clenched his jaw, feeling a tight knot in his stomach. The second choice had always felt inevitable, but hearing it from Varric made it more real. "And the other path? The other choice is the one of rebellion. You could reject this prophecy, this union, and choose a path of resistance. You could join those who wish to sever the connection between Xyrion and Earth, to destroy the alliance entirely and preserve the independence of both worlds. You would become a symbol of freedom, of fighting against destiny." John shook his head, confused. "But that path, what does that even look like? What happens to Earth then? What happens to Xyrion?" Varric hesitated. "It could lead to war. The destruction of all that both worlds have built together. The rogue factions within Xyrion would see you as a weapon to divide our peoples even further. But in the end, you would be free. No one would demand anything from you, but at what cost?" The battle within. John stood motionless, feeling as if the walls of the chamber were closing in on him. Both choices seemed impossibly difficult, both carrying unimaginable consequences. His head spun with the weight of the decision. On one hand, there was the chance to end centuries of conflict, to unite two worlds that had once been allies. On the other, there was the opportunity to preserve the fragile independence of Earth, to protect it from the influence of a foreign empire. The choice felt too big for him. He wasn't a king or a general. He was just a mechanic. The sounds of distant fighting grew louder, shaking the chamber as if reminding him that time was running out. He could hear the pounding of footsteps, the shouting of voices, the clash of weapons. The traitors were drawing closer. "You cannot wait forever, John," the Emperor said, his voice soft but firm. "You must choose now. The choice defines not just your future, but the future of both our worlds." John's heart thudded painfully in his chest as he turned to look at Varric, then at the Emperor. He realized they were all watching him, waiting for him to make the impossible decision. And for the first time in his life, he understood the true weight of leadership, the burden of having to choose between two paths, each with its own consequences. The moment of decision. A distant explosion rattled the palace, shaking the floor beneath their feet. John's mind raced as he considered his options. The path of unity, the one that would demand so much of him, felt right, but it also felt dangerous. The idea of leading two worlds into an uncertain future terrified him. But the path of rebellion, the one that promised freedom, seemed like a lie, a path that would only lead to more pain and loss. John looked up at the Emperor and Varric, his eyes filled with determination. He couldn't choose the easy way out. He couldn't just walk away from everything, from the truth he now knew about his heritage. He had to choose the path that would bring hope, even if it meant sacrifice. "I choose unity," he said, his voice steady, though his heart pounded in his chest. "I choose the future, even if it's hard. I choose to fight for both worlds." The Emperor's face softened, his golden eyes gleaming with approval. "You have chosen wisely, John Carter. The future of both Earth and Xerion lies in your hands." The shocking revelation. Just as John made his decision, the doors to the archives crashed open, and a group of rogue Xerionian soldiers stormed in. Their faces were masked, their weapons drawn, and behind them stood a figure that John recognized instantly, Counselor Drex, his eyes cold and calculating. "You fool," Drex sneered, stepping forward. "You've chosen the wrong path. Your union will destroy us all." But before Drex could speak further, the Emperor raised his hand, and the entire chamber was bathed in a brilliant light. "Enough," the Emperor said, his voice commanding. "The truth has already been decided." Drex's eyes widened, and his hand shot toward a hidden weapon. But before he could make a move, the light intensified, revealing something John hadn't expected, a holographic projection of Earth, its continents shifting and evolving. "Your choice, John, was never about Xerion or Earth alone," the Emperor said softly. "It was always about the two of them together." The truth that Drex tried to bury. The prophecy was not a curse, but a gift, a chance for both of our worlds to heal. The hologram showed Earth and Xerion coming together, not as conquerors, but as partners. The united power of both worlds was enough to stop the war, enough to bring peace, not just for the two planets, but for the entire galaxy. John realized then, with shocking clarity, what his role truly was. The prophecy hadn't been a burden, it had been a call to unite, to heal, to lead. He had chosen the future, and now, the future was his to create. The beginning of a new era. The rogue soldiers, realizing the shift in power, hesitated. Their weapons lowered, unsure of what to do next. John took a step forward, his voice steady. "This war ends now. The future belongs to those who dare to choose peace, and that's exactly what I intend to do." With the power of his decision, John Carter had changed the course of history. The battle was far from over, but the first steps toward a new era had been taken. And in that moment, John knew that no matter what came next, he had made the right choice. The future was in his hands, and it was time to build something that would last.